the raised eyebrows were mostly from some people on the Arab side, and especially Hamas, who saw Mr. Blair as having been too friendly to Israel over the years.
Former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair has been officially announced as one of the members of Donald Trump's Gaza Board of Peace, which will oversee the future development of the Gaza Strip. The US President has taken to his social media platform Truth Social to say that it is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled. He would say that, wouldn't he? Now, other members include US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, his special envoy to the Middle East, and the US President is going to be remaining on the board as chair. Well, let's welcome Professor Chuck Freilich. He's the former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and a professor at Columbia and Tel Aviv universities. Professor, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us again.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
What do you make of the, what has been called the most prestigious board ever assembled?
Well, President Trump, I think we can recognize, is known for the occasional bit of hyperbole, but he has certainly put together a prestigious board. It's actually, there's a three-tiered structure here. There's the Board of Peace, which is the overall governing body. It will only meet at least once a year to formulate overall policy. At this point, with the exception of Mr. Blair and Mr. Melendonov, the UN Mideast envoy, all of the other 9 members at this point are senior American officials. Half of this board overlaps with the second tier, which is an executive body, most of the American members, Mr. Blair and Mr. Melendonov. And here there are also a number of regional officials from Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, the UAE, and Israel. They will be responsible for overall daily supervision of the third tier. I'll come to that in a minute. And each of the members of this executive board will also be responsible for a specific functional area of governance and reconstruction in Gaza. And the third tier is a transitional technocratic Palestinian government, which will actually implement the policies set down by the executive board and be responsible for day-to-day governance.
What is going to be the primary objective of this Board of Peace? You've explained how it's going to be put together, but what is going to be its primary objective?
Well, it is a crucial part of the phase 2 of the president's 20-point Gaza peace plan, which was then adopted as a Security Council resolution. Mm-hmm. So the first part was the ceasefire, was the return of the hostages. Now it's supposed to go to the second stage, which first and foremost includes the dismantlement and disarmament of Hamas, both as a military force and the governing body, the de facto governing body in half of Gaza. And it is then also supposed to be the means for funding and governing the reconstruction efforts. And once all of this happens, it's to then lead to an Israeli withdrawal from the half of the Gaza Strip that it is still in control of. Now, that's where the rub is, because it is extraordinarily unlikely that Hamas will agree to disarm itself, or that it will agree to truly step down as the governing body in the half of Gaza. They may make various performative moves, but a substantive change is very unlikely.
And Professor, what leverage will this Board of Peace have in order to remove Hamas from Gaza? As you said, there has been that release of hostages. We've seen some preliminary agreements from Hamas, but we've also heard from Hamas that they have no intention of not being involved in the day-to-day runnings of Gaza. They very much see themselves still as the people who are going to be controlling Gaza. So aside from restarting the conflict, and as many people listening will point out that the conflict still goes on, there are still skirmishes, there's still fighting taking place in Gaza. But what leverage does this Board of Peace have to totally remove Hamas from Gaza?
Well, it represents the overwhelming opinion of the international community. which sees Hamas as a terrorist organization, which has also simply been totally contrary to the interests of the Palestinian people, to the Gazans. So there is the diplomatic weight behind this. There is the ability to harness international and especially Gulf financing for the reconstruction. And without this role played by the international community, the international stabilization force, the military force, which is actually supposed to lead to Hamas's disarmament, none of this is going to happen. But as you were saying in your question, Hamas has no intention of either disarming or stepping down. For them, the recent war has been another stage in what is a long-term battle designed to bring about Israel's destruction and its replacement by a Palestinian state. They will not cooperate with this. So it's really hard to see how we can go beyond this formal announcement of the various bodies that I described. And maybe they'll be able to do some work and some limited work on reconstruction. But if Hamas isn't willing to dismantle itself, then it's hard to see how anything good happens.
Just finally, before we go, Professor, there have been some raised eyebrows from former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair's inclusion in this peace board. What do you think he can bring to the board?
Well, the raised eyebrows were mostly from some people on the Arab side, and especially Hamas, who saw Mr. Blair as having been too friendly to Israel over the years. And he was quite friendly to Israel, but on the other hand, it's hard to imagine that Israel would have agreed to a senior member of both the overall Board of Peace and the Executive Board who wasn't friendly to Israel. But I think it's also, there's been a discrediting done to Mr. Blair because he was also an effective peace negotiator in the Middle East who may have had pro-Israel sentiments, but he also negotiated as an honest broker between the sides. And so I don't really believe that this was a justified criticism of him. And I believe that he stands to make a very important contribution here.
Are you surprised that there weren't more European leaders? There was a moment where it was we thought that possibly Sir Keir Starmer would be part of the board. We haven't got any major European leaders on that board. Do you think that makes a difference? Were you surprised by it?
Well, I think the current list is a temporary one. The U.S. has said that explicitly. So we may still see various European and hopefully some other regional leaders joining as well. There were reports today that President Sisi of Egypt and President Erdogan of Turkey were invited by the U.S. to join. I'd be very surprised if Israel agrees to Mr. Erdogan, but we need other regional leaders and international leaders.
Professor, thank you so much for your time. Really good to speak to you. Professor Chuck Freilich there, former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and a professor at Columbia and Tel Aviv universities.